Welcome to this week's Paddy's Day. Paddy Fitzpatrick joins me again. How you doing, Paddy?
How are you doing?
Very good, thank you. Big weekend of boxing ahead. One of your old boxers, George Groves, in action against Martin Murray. It's quite an intriguing fight at domestic level, isn't it?
Great fight.
Yeah. Looking
Excellent
forward to
fight.
it.
Really looking forward to it, yeah. I think could be one of our fights of the year at home.
And you said to me just then, you're very much a 50-50 fight. That's quite hard to pick a winner.
Definitely, I would have it as a 50-50 fight. George has got world-class jab, always has had. He's got world-class power in that long right hand. Martin will be more comfortable inside. He has fought with Golovkin, whether he was losing that fight, clearly losing that fight, but at no stage was he trying to survive in that fight. He was always trying to win it. So at no stage was he inside trying to just hold on and get by. He will be more comfortable inside. He will be more comfortable at roughing George up inside. But I think the thing that really stands out for me ultimately is that Martin Murray is getting a fight that he's always craved. He's getting that domestic dust up that he's always craved. He's had to go away from home 4 times. He's now finally getting the chance to have the fight that the other guys in the division have had. They've had the domestic dust up. George has had it, De Gale's had it, Carl Froch has had it. He's now getting something that he's always desired. Whereas George is taking this fight because he has to. And when I say that, could he have fought somebody else? Yes. But did he have to have a fight to keep moving forward? Yeah. He had to have a fight. He's number 2 in the WBC, but he's not going to just take the number 1 ranking when Callum Smith fights Jack. He'd have to fight an eliminator. He's number 4 in the WBA, but does that mean he just gets a crack at the world title? No, he'd have to fight an eliminator unless he was given an option. So he has to take a fight, so he might as well take a big domestic clash that's going to earn him good money as opposed to taking smaller money to fight other people. But it's not a fight that he's craved, whereas for Martin Murray it is.
You said it'd still be a fight that George will be, well up for, though.
Oh yeah, listen, George, when it's time to step up, there's no better man. And the fight that sticks out for me to prove that is the Rabrasi fight. When he lost to Carl the second time, he said, I don't want to be wrapped in cotton wool. I know I was winning that second fight. I felt good. I just made that mistake and got hit with that shot. He said, I don't want to go back to an 8-rounder. I don't want a 10-rounder. I want a fight that means something. And that fight happened half a mile away from where he got knocked out. So for him to take that fight so close, deal with so many emotions, and still perform the way he did, he's proved, he's metal. He's proved that when it is time to step up, that he will do it. So he's going to perform, but it's not a fight that he wants. George is dangerous when he thinks he's already ahead of the man. That's where his danger lies. When he thinks already, this is a fight I'm going to win. The fight with Rabrasi, he knew he had no choice. I can't lose 3 in a row. I have to win this. So it didn't matter who he was fighting, he was going to summon something up. And the fact that it was for the European title even brought more out in him. This now is a big domestic at home. It will bring out that grit in George again.
It is an intriguing fight, but George seems to, since the Froch fights continually, probably the Paddy Jack fight, get criticised for, the opponents that he's been facing, and we discussed it earlier, and he's probably dominated all of those fights, and yet still getting, criticised. Mentally, what will that be doing to him?
Well, he's every fighter fights because of their ego. They do want to prove, look at me, look who I am, look what I am to this sport. Like he said the other day in the Gloves Are Off, he always wanted to be one of the greatest of all time. He says, I know I can't be that now, but I still want to be a world champion. So you do it because you want people to acknowledge you as being the best. So fighting guys that everyone knows are just marking time fights doesn't do anything to stroke that ego. So he's going into this fight now with Martin, coming off 2 gimme fights to get him in his groove with Shane and to get back on the horse after the Paddy Jack fight. But when you think about it, Carl Froch is one of the best we've ever had at 68 pound. He fought very well with him twice. I think Christoph looks better now than he did when George beat him, because even though you're talking about the lost Callum Smith and the lost Rocky Phelan, George beat Christoph better than those two men beat him. And Christoph has proved that theory that people had before George fought him, I can't punch so George will just walk him down and knock him out. I think there's a bit of a ridiculous statement to say, especially if anyone understands boxing. Just because you're not a puncher doesn't mean that you can't take a punch. There's lots of fighters out there that haven't been punchers but can take one. So he's proved now since that fight that he can take a shot. Same with Callum Smith fight, same with Rocky Phelan. He can take and he can give it. So George has performed at a good high level. Definitely with the two fights with with Carl, and definitely against the Badou Jack fight. I think Badou Jack is very underrated, and I think he will go on to prove to people that he's a very good world champion. Kugan Cassius called me the day that he was fighting Anthony Durrell for the world title, and I was in Ireland, and he said to me, "This is just a walk in the park for Durrell, isn't it?" And I said, "No, I fancy Badou Jack in this fight." And he was shocked, and he went, "Really? How was that?" And I said, "Well, I think Durrell looks better than what he is because of his record. He's undefeated. He can punch, but he's a little bit slow, a little bit monotonous. I think that Badou Jack, he's got excellent balance. I said he's got a good jab, he feints well, he understands distance. I said, this is a real fight. I said, I like Jack in this fight." And I think that then his win over George, be it a split decision, and his fight since with Lucien Boutte, he'll prove fight by fight that he's an improving champion. So George has fought at a good level. So has Martin Murray.
Well, I was just going to say that both George and Martin have just failed at that world title level, haven't they? So does this make this fight, a real career-defining fight for both of them? George has suggested that the loser may have to retire from boxing, so suggests that he's thinking that way.
I think that George loses, he definitely retires, because I don't think he'll be able to summon it up in him again to go again. I think Martin Murray could lose in an excellent fight and still be able to go again. But I do think overall, I think that the loser will probably retire, but I think that leans more on George and Martin Murray.
Can you pick a winner if you had to?
No, it's an excellent fight. The longer it goes, if it's a hard fight, the more tired both men will get. Martin Murray has showed that he will get stronger and not question himself when the rounds go on. Whereas the first fight with Carl got stopped, we think too soon. People said to me, "Did you not think he was hurt in that round, in the 9th round?" I said, "Yeah, I do think he was hurt. But I think that he should have been given a chance to go on. I don't think there was no bad intentions from the referee to stop it. I just think people do make the wrong call. I thought he made the wrong call that night. I thought he could have let it go on a little bit. Because George was so dominant up to that point. The second fight, you can't argue at all. He got hit with that shot that put him out. He was fatiguing in the Rabrasi fight, but that was more emotional fatigue than anything else because he was exhausted at the end of the first round. And in the 7th round, you can see him looking over my shoulder at Christoph Rabrasi like, what the hell is he still doing here? And I had to say to him, what are you looking at? Pay attention to me. Because his mind was drifting more onto why is he still here as opposed to, okay, it's the 7th round and I'm in control of this fight. So I think the longer it goes, George will ask more questions of himself. Whereas the longer it goes for Martin, he'll just think, I've been in these fights before, that's okay, I'm cool with this. George in the Badou Jack fight, round 8, 9 and 10. No good. I told him at the end of round 8, that's no good. You look tired and you ain't tired. At the end of round 9, I said, that's another round you've lost, it's 2 in a row. I said, you ain't tired. I pointed at Barry O'Connell in the corner, I said, you've broken personal best with him up in Big Bear. You are not tired. At the end of round 10, I stood in the corner hanging like this, and I said, that's what you look like. You look like you're hanging out your ass. Pull it together. And he went back and pulled it together again. But he'll definitely ask himself questions. Every time you ask yourself that question, That's your opportunity to quit. It doesn't mean you will, but that's your opportunity. Whereas I don't think Martin Murray will ask himself those questions. Now, George's got an excellent jab, and your jab is your bread and butter. No matter what style, no matter what height you are, your jab is the bread and butter. George's got a world-class jab, and he's got that world-class power in that long right hand. Martin Murray has dealt with world-class power. Was he losing to Triple G? Yes, he was. Was he still in the fight? Even though he was losing clearly, he was still in the fight because he was never trying to hang on. He was always trying to do something. What stands out for me is that since the Golovkin fight, he's gone and fought Arthur Abrams, who's the biggest puncher in the super middleweight division. Now, he can be lazy. He can fight for a minute of every round, Arthur Abrams. But he's still the biggest puncher, the most dangerous dude in the super middleweight division. Martin Murray, to me, appeared like, he might disagree with me, appeared like he was, a bit tentative early on against him. He had to really get a taste, feel his power. He was new at the weight. There was more questions going into that fight than he had answers. But as the rounds went down, he thought, okay, and he pressed a little more and got into it a little more. He'll have actually finished that fight, even though it was a loss. He still believes he should have won it. Yeah? I thought he was going to win going into it because I thought he was so dogged. I did have him to lose on the night. I do think he lost it. But I can understand why people thought that he did enough. He will certainly take more of a confidence, not that he's lacking it, but he will take more of a confidence from that loss that, no, I'm still there. The Golovkin fight didn't damage me. I'm still good to go. Now he's bedded in at the weight as well. He will take more from that than George has taken from the Paddy Jackman.
So you sound like you think it's going to be more of a mental battle than a tactical battle.
I think every fight is mental, unless you're in full control the whole time. Every fight is mental, because if you're not in full control the whole time, and you know you're not, you got to make an adjustment. So when you're sat in the corner, you're asking yourself, can I make this adjustment? So if you look at somebody like Cesar Chavez against Meldrick Taylor, losing the fight clearly, lost most of the rounds, but at no stage when that bell went did you ever see even a slight kink in his armor. He'd walk back to that corner like, it's okay, I'll get him next round. Then he'd lose again, okay, I'll get him next round. And famously, we all know he got him with 10 seconds left. He never once questioned himself. I see that in Martin Murray. I see Martin Murray could lose round after round and think, it's okay, I'll get you. I could see George winning rounds, but the fight getting harder, and him start to ask questions. But the jab, Martin has got to negate the jab. He's got to deal with that jab. You don't have to out-jab the man with a good jab. You just got to make him use that jab more than he wants to use it. So George will be looking for an early lead. If Martin had his hands nice and tidy, nice and high, and was just making him work more than he wanted to, making sure he didn't leave openings for those shots, but just making him work more than he wanted, making him work, then if your best weapon hasn't created damage by round 5, round 6, and it hasn't created that damage, then you're going to think, well, if that's my best weapon, now I've got to go to inside when I don't want to be. I've got to grow to somewhere not because I want to go there, but because I have to. That'll be very interesting.
So it sounds like if George can, dominate with the jab, you'd favour George, but if it becomes a bit more of an inside fight, then Murray's got it.
Yeah, and if George, listen, Carl Froch has got a chin like granite. He's proven that time and time again. George had him on his ass in that first round. George hit him with flipping nearly everything but the kitchen sink in the 6th. So George can hurt any man in the division. George could step up to light heavyweight and hurt those men up there. George has got that world-class power in that right hand. He only has to find Martin a few times early in the fight, and he can start to do some damage. Regardless of how strong your mentality, you can start to get physically damaged by George's shots. So that's why I call it a 50-50 fight. George could go out there and find that right hand real early, start teeing off on it. Could be an early night and he'd look like he's the boss. If he doesn't find that openings early on, then that turns into a type of fight that he doesn't want it to be. No man who's got a great jab wants it to be a fight. Do you understand me? Mike Tyson didn't mind it being a fight. Cesar Chavez would go inside, wouldn't mind it being a fight. These type of men don't mind. This is a fight, this is what I'm made for, this is what I like. Any man that's got a great jab and knows he's got a great jab wants to fight behind that jab. And if he's not allowed to fight behind that jab, I don't care who you are, you know you're not in the fight that you want to be in. You want to be behind that jab, drop something off, get back on that jab. Behind that jab, you might go inside for a little bit, get back on that jab. That's what you want when you know you got a great jab. You don't want to be dragged into something, not on your terms, but on the other man's terms.
I sense I won't get you to pick a winner for this one, so I'll ask you whether you think the fight will go the distance.
No, I don't think the fight will go the distance. I wouldn't be surprised if it did, but no, I wouldn't. I could see George breaking him up with the jab, you know, and then start to find that right hand, and maybe Martin just getting a little bit reckless and getting stopped. But I can also equally see the tide changing between round 4 and round 6, and Martin just breaking him down bit by bit by bit. And the thing is, if George starts to question himself inside those rounds 7, 8 and 9, Martin Murray won't stop to admire that, won't even pause. He'll keep breaking. And Badou Jack started to do very well to the body late in that fight. Martin Murray and Badou Jack is more of a boxer. He works well to the body, but he likes to work off that jab a lot. Whereas Martin Murray has got a very good jab. I don't think it's as good as George's. I don't think it's as spiteful. I don't think it's as varied. But he's got a very good jab. But he will always, when he gets inside, go straight to work. I could see Martin Murray grinding him down, stopping him too. That's why it's such an intriguing fight. It's the type of fight that you look at and people would say George is the favourite. When you say George is the favourite, I think it's way too easy to just go George is the favourite. Why is he the favourite? They've both fell short at the highest level. So did Martin fight the weaker champions and George lose to the better ones, and that's why they say he's the favourite? No. George lost twice to Class Guy and Carl, and he's lost a split decision away from home, which could have been a win anywhere else, to an improving champion, who I think will actually be noted as being a very good champion the more he fights. But what's Martin done? Beaten Sergio Martinez but not get the decision in Argentina. Very close fight with Arte Abrahams, the most dangerous puncher in the super middleweight division in Germany. A draw with Sturm. Who else is there? And then Golovkin.
I think Golovkin.
Who
Pound for pound.
took punishment, took a lot of punishment in that fight. But what's impressive is he was never anxious in there looking to get out.
And he had success against him.
He had success and he was never anxious. That's the thing. He was never anxious. So then you'd say George is the bigger puncher. You can look back right throughout history. It's not always the biggest puncher that wins. Right throughout history. It is not always the biggest puncher that wins. Muhammad Ali wasn't the biggest puncher in the world. He beat lots of dudes that were. You know, you do not have to be the big puncher. Mike Tyson was one of the biggest punchers out there. He was beaten by Buster Douglas. Now people could say, oh, he wasn't ready or anything else for that fight. It don't matter. Douglas took what he had to give him and then hurt him and took him out of there. You do not have to be the biggest puncher. Same thing I said to George going into the Carl Froch fight. Do not try to knock the man out. Just keep hitting him. Trust that you got power. Don't try and load up. Just keep hitting him. Very few men can continuously take being hit. Very few. Martin Murray against Golovkin was 1 round away from finishing that fight. Would he have still lost it? Yes, he'd have still lost it. Was he 1 round away from taking punishment in every round and still trying to go about his business against a huge puncher? Yeah. Did he take the power of Abrams and still go about his business and nearly do it? Yeah. Did he deal with a good boxer in Martinez? Yeah. So he's dealt with a lot of different styles. So how anyone has this fight tipping in somebody's favour or widely is beyond me. This is a 50-50 fight. But I'll say it again. Martin Murray has got the fight that he has always craved. Not that he always craved a fight with George. He always craved a big domestic fight. 4 times he's had to go away from home. Now he gets the big domestic fight, be it not for a world title, it don't matter, at home with a big name in George that everyone's paying attention to. He's got everything he's ever wanted now. Whereas George is in a fight with Martin because he has to be in it, not because he desires to be in it. I'm not saying that he doesn't want to fight Martin, but it's not a fight that he was like, oh, I want this fight. He's had a big domestic fight. He was on a pay-per-view against Carl. Big pay-per-view second fight. Big domestic fight at the O2, 20,000, 19,000 people with James DeGale in only his 11 to 12 fight. He knows what it's like to fight these guys. He's had those fights. But for him to think that he's more comfortable because he's had those fights than Martin couldn't be more wrong. That's him just playing psychological games. Same as him saying Martin isn't very good inside. He just wants Martin not to come inside. Martin is very comfortable. Martin is more comfortable inside than George will be. That don't mean George can't operate inside. He don't want to stay there. He don't want to be there. He will look to get out and create space again. There's a lot to be said for that. Great fight. Yeah. There could be a 2 and 3 like Martin Murray says, but I think Martin Murray could lose in a great fight, get offered the rematch and take it in an instant. George lose, don't think he has it to get up again.
Well, we'll just have to wait and see.
We'll have to wait and see.
It's a great fight, like you said.
I don't care which one of them wins. I'm a fan of boxing.
Yeah.
I haven't got a preference. I just want a better dude in the night to win. And whichever one of them wins, when he moves on, I'll be sat front and centre wanting to watch that again. Because they're both class operators.
Fair play. You mentioned big punches. There's another big puncher in action at the weekend. Anthony Joshua. Fighting another unbeaten American dude who knocks people out for fun. But is it going to be a similar situation as the Charles Martin, which was a bit of a disappointment, really?
I think so. I think the Charles Martin fight, he was up in Big Bear when me and George and that was up there for the Paddy Jack fight. And me and George was in the gym one day. I don't know why we happened to be in there a bit later. We were in there anyway. And we walked in to get something. Charles Martin was in there sparring. And it was him, the dude he was sparring, and Charles Martin coach. And it just didn't look good. And we didn't know who he was at the time. It just didn't look good. And me and George were looking at each other thinking, don't know who these two dudes are. And when he finished, I said to Charles Martin, I says, you fight, man? No, I shouldn't have been asking the dude with that record, do you fight? I said, do you fight? He went, yeah, I fight. He said, fine. I went, oh, my bad. I said, amateur pro. And he went, pro? He said, I'm 21-0, 20 knockouts, or 22-0, 20 knockouts. And I was like, oh, sorry, man. I didn't know. I says, and he was like, yeah. And he was okay about it, but he was cool. But I just think, why he didn't look, I didn't know what he was amateur pro. So the fact that he went in, got that shot and got that IBF title, and then Joshua did what he had to do, fair play to Joshua. He had the IBF that got stripped off Fury, but he still had the belt. So Joshua did what he had to do, went in and handled his business. But now, I see this dude going by his record as being the same type of dude. He's got a draw with a dude he shouldn't have a draw with. Can he punch? Who knows? Because of the guys he was fighting, we don't know. Can he punch, or is he just a big dude? All big men can punch enough. Anthony Joshua come out, be lackadaisical, he could end up in his ass. But I don't think Anthony Joshua's like that. I think he comes across as being the consummate professional. So I think he'll come out razor sharp mentally. He's got everything to offer physically. I think he's improving all the time. So I expect to see him in a dominant performance and take care of this dude. Anywhere between 2 and 5 rounds. That's what I would expect based on the other guy's record and based on what we know of Joshua already, what he's proven that he has it physically. He's fought at the highest level in such a short amount of time as an amateur. To go and win an Olympic gold in a few years, phenomenal. So it's not like the big stage puts him at ease. He likes the big stage. So I expect him to come out and dominate and take care of it. Hope he does, because then you got big nights ahead. Because Tyson Fury wins again against Klitschko, which I think he will. I think he'll probably stop him, because if Klitschko, it'll be a more dangerous fight, but Klitschko has to let his hands go. He has to let them go at a time that he doesn't want to, because he's the type of fighter that has to land the jab before he wants to throw anything else. And if Fury just comes out there for the first 2 or 3 rounds and just makes him miss, he'll get anxious, he'll let his hand go and he don't know where he is. He could get knocked out early, even though with his power he could take Fury out. So it's a good, exciting fight. If Fury comes through it, we got Fury, Joshua, and Wilder. Those 3 men in the mix. It's going to be big nights ahead.
And I think David Price is talking about if he gets through his next fight, he'd like to take on Joshua. So is that a more of a mouth-watering fight for Joshua fans than these last 2 Americans?
Yeah, than the last 2 Americans, most definitely.
Because I don't think Eddie Hearn doesn't seem in any rush to put Joshua into
well, he
a
shouldn't
Tyson
be.
Fury fight.
He shouldn't be,
or a
because
Wilder fight.
a fight never diminishes when you make people wait, unless you make people wait too late. But now, everyone thought that Mayweather against Pacquiao happened too late. They still spent 600 million on it. You know, so 400 something or 600 million. It was still the biggest, highest grossing fight in history, period. So it wasn't left too late. And do some people think it would have been a different fight if it happened a few years earlier? Lots of people think that. Styles for fights, I disagree. I think Mayweather still would have been, because he would have been fresher too. I still think it would have been Mayweather. But it was a fight that was left to wait for around 5 years and still was huge. So long as both men are still performing, and Pacquiao was at the highest level, and obviously Mayweather was, because he always has, so then it's never too late. So long as Fury keeps his title, so long as Joshua keeps his title, is it going to be too late? No, it'll only make us want it more and more and more. And every time it doesn't get made, we'll complain, and then by the time they come through those next fights and they're about to fight, we'll hope it'll happen again, and if it doesn't, we'll complain and we'll build and we'll anticipate, and it'll be huge. So is Eddie Hearn doing the right thing? The Brazil fight, I think, is another fight, like I said, as long as he comes out correct, he takes care of. Does a David Price fight make sense? It's more sellable, I think, than the Brazil against, or the other guy that I said, what's his name?
Charles Martin.
Charles Martin, excuse me. He wasn't champion long, I can't forget. So is it a bigger fight than those 2? Yeah, because it's a big domestic fight. Is it a fight I'd still favour Joshua? Yeah. You know, Joshua is on fire. So would it sell? Yeah, I think it would sell. Eddie Hearn has definitely proved. People knock him all the time, you know that, about Hearn for Hearns and Hearn with Hearn and do all that and slam. But I tell you what, he is the king of the promoters over here right now. He puts on the biggest shows. He gets his fighters out there all the time in the public eye, even when they're not fighting. And can he package that and sell that? Yeah, he sure can, yeah.
David Hay was a little while back wanting to fight Joshua, but it now seems like he may be taking on Tony Bellew at some sort of a catch weight. What do you make of that matchup?
You know, you'd favour David, but, you know, it's still a fight that I think I'd like to look into before I comment too much. Tony Bellew keeps referring to some sparring session that they had, and a spar is just a spar, but I'd love to know a bit more about that. Was it a bit of a free-for-all, and how did Tony do in that free-for-all and so on? Tony can, you know, David has to fight at his pace. And still, don't forget, David hasn't had no questions asked about him since he come back. David fought 2 men that the first man you could understand, but that first dude sneaked into the top 15 of WBA because they couldn't put David in there because he hadn't fought since the Klitschko one. That dude had been fighting, so they were able to sneak him in there. So then when David beats him, he gets the top 15. And then he's had another fight since, but he hasn't, let's be fair, he hasn't been tested. Is David world class? We know he is. He was a world champion of cruiserweight, world champion of heavyweight, so there ain't no question in that whatsoever. But does he still have the desire to be in a fight? We don't know. We just don't know. That's the truth of it. Does Tony Bellew? Yeah, he's just come through a fight. And he's been in fights. And
what a fight that was as well.
Yeah, and he's just come through that, and he's just been in other ones before that, and he doesn't shy away from a challenge. And I think he'd jump at the chance to fight David Hay, And it'll be interesting to see more of that the closer it gets.
And Chris Eubank Jr. edging towards Golovkin, so we hear.
Fair play to him.
Thoughts on that matchup?
You know, I fancy Golovkin, same as I think the majority of people would be. But the definition of a fighter, Eubank ticks those boxes. He wants these fights. People can say he's crazy for taking them, but he wants these fights. Kind of like Amir Khan fighting Canelo. People said, you know, it's suicide. Why is he fighting Canelo? But even people in Muhammad's camp when he fought Foreman said it was suicide. Why are you fighting him? Even people in his own camp didn't want him to fight. But why do we remember him as being great? It wasn't because of a fight. It was because of his mentality and his willingness to fight anybody. You know? And then when you win those fights where everyone says you were crazy for taking, then you start becoming great. So Amir Khan fighting Canelo, he lost, yeah. But did he have that desire to be great in him? Yeah. Same thing with Eubanks. Everyone says, what the hell are you doing taking him? Most people said it was just publicity, attaching his names to these big names, but he didn't actually want them. Well, if that fight comes off, well, we've all been proved liars, haven't we? Because he did attach his name to him, because he did want him. So fair play to him, yeah. Still, do I favour Golovkin? Most definitely, I favour Golovkin. Is it unconceivable that he can win? Highly unlikely that he can win. It's not inconceivable, because he has that attitude to begin with. Imagine if he did.
Cool.
Him against Eubanks then against Billy Joe would be absolutely massive. It would probably be the biggest fight we've ever had over here, because it would be for every middleweight belt. It'd be unbelievable. If he's chosen to go towards Golovkin as opposed to taking that rematch with Billy Joe, we can all say, you know, why didn't you take that rematch if you thought you could win it? But also, if what he really wanted was Golovkin and he gets him, fair play to him.
And it's all about earning money at the end of the day as well, isn't it? So.
It's all about earning money. Yeah.
Or trying to earn money.
Yeah, well, do you know what? He could with his name. Let's be fair. Look how he has a big enough name and a high enough profile now where he could fight other fights and just earn money. He could. Is he earning more for fighting Golovkin? You'd hope so, for definite. And I'm sure he is. But he could definitely earn more than the average cat fighting a lot easier names. Do you understand me? He could, for sure. And he's not taking that route. So he does have that fighter's mentality. And let's be fair, his dad had that too. His dad would be complacent. He had lots of fights in his career where it was almost like he just drifted through them or complacent and didn't look good at all in him. But every one of his dad's fights, when he knew he was up against it, they were always his best fights. He always stepped up. And mentally, you see that in Eubanks. He's very, very focused. He sparred with George a few times, had him up for the first Carl fight, and he sparred with George when George was with Adam and I was up in camp, I think it wasn't the Gale fight, but it was a couple of fights after that. I think the Paul Smith fight, he sparred him a couple of them. And he was never rude, but he was always completely focused. You'd walk in, he'd be in front of the mirror putting some Vaseline on his face, he'd go, hello, and that'd be it. He was in the gym, he had work to do. You know, he's professional, how we go about business.
If you were training him for Golovkin, how would you plot Triple G's downfall?
I'd call the Pope first and get him over and bless us both. And listen, I'm not going to get into that.
That's a job you wouldn't take then.
It's not necessarily a job you wouldn't take. I would never want to take a dude to a fight that I believed he couldn't win. But even if I thought, is it a fight that I want to take him to, but the fighter can sit there and convince you that it's a fight that he really wants, then you take him. Because the fighter's mentality is the most important thing. And if you can sense, no, I really want this fight because I can pay my mortgage off, and you think this dude's going to get badly hurt. Or a guy who's, let's say, he's lost one fight to Billy Joe, and Billy Joe is class. He is class operator. So he's lost that one fight. And he sits there and he convinces you, no, I want this fight. got a burning desire for this fight. I want this fight. Why wouldn't you take it? But then you'd have to see, does he agree with your game plan for taking it? I definitely think against Golovkin, you have got to go inside on him early. Not necessarily to be in a fight, but to nullify his forward momentum. Because when George sparred him, it was after the second Froch fight. It was at the start of camp for the Rabrasi fight. George wasn't in good shape. And when we got there, I said, I need you to, as soon as the bell goes, just walk up and walk straight inside. And George was like, why am I going to do that? I said, if you move on this dude, he's going to take the ground away from you anyway. And then momentum will be on his side and he's just going to do what he does. I said, he's got a fight coming up in 2 weeks. He ain't going to want to be in a war. Plus, it's not like he's a foolish dude. He knows you are a class operator. He knows you got power in that right hand. He knows you got a good jab. You know, he knows, he respects the level that you're at. If you walk right up inside him, he's not just going to start opening up with a fight in 2 weeks' time happening. He's going to start thinking, why is he in here? And do a little research himself early on and find out what's going on. I said, you walk away from him early on and start moving around the edge of the ring and start popping that jab out, he'll just start chewing you up. So I think you've got to go in early on him, as much to nullify him for a bit and try and break his rhythm as to actually go in there just necessarily trying to win the rounds. So does Eubank have the nuts and the chin and that to go inside on him early on? I think he does. Will he be successful? Depends what he can do when he's in there. Depends what game plan they put together, which I have no knowledge about. But does he have what it takes to walk up early, get inside, sit there and just nullify what he's doing, take away that forward momentum, which is a big part of his game? Yeah, I think he does. Because there's no point in after 4 rounds of you being on the outside, taking a bit of a hiding off him, that you think, well, this ain't working, so I got to go forward now, because you're going forward after taking a hiding already. So you're not going forward really because you want to, you're going forward because what you were doing isn't working. You're better off walk straight up inside him and let him know, I'm coming forward and walking up inside because I want to as well. He's going to mentally think you're ready to go to work straight away. You don't necessarily have to go to work straight away.
Interesting. Well, we'll see which way it goes, if it happens. So. Paddy, thanks as always for joining us.
Pete.
Cheers, Paddy.
Come on.